Hey everybody, it is Megan here with you with Fiveable. Tonight we're going to be reviewing how to write an FRQ in AP Psychology. While we're getting started here, I would love it if everyone could just tell me where they're located, like where your school is, where you go to school, and what unit you're currently in. Have you started Unit 2 yet? Are you still in Unit 1? Does your teacher go in a different order and start with a different unit? Just kind of curious to see where we're all at. So feel free to type that in the chat. That's just sometimes useful for me to kind of know where you're located and what unit you are currently covering with your teachers in AP Psych. So again, my name's Megan Ravello. I am a teacher in Middleton, Wisconsin. I teach at Middleton High School. This is my 6th year teaching AP Psychology, and it's one of my favorite classes to teach, so I feel pretty good about that. And we just started school right after Labor Day, so my kids are still trucking along on Unit 1. We just actually wrapped up Module 3 if you're in the Myers textbook. But looks like we have one person in Florida, the Unit 2 first, and now you're doing Unit 1. Okay, that works. Yeah, in psychology, it's not like history where you kind of have to go in order. Sometimes you can kind of skip around and do different units in different orders. So I just go with whatever order the textbook is in. It just seems to make my life easier. So anyone else, where you're from, what unit you're in right now, share it in the chat. I would love to hear it. All right, so I introduced myself again, Megan Ravello here with you and Fiveable. Make sure that you are following Fiveable on all of our social media channels. That way you find out about all of our live reviews, any like exciting updates and information. And you know that if you join Fiveable, you get access to more resources. There is these free live streams, but there's also a paid subscription that can get you lots of good help as AP time comes near. Zach is in Tennessee. Yes, we use the Myers 2nd edition. So Module 13, is that bio? Are you learning about like parts of the brain and stuff? Because I feel like that's what Module 13 is. Yes. Look at that. I have my whole textbook memorized, sort of. Good. Cool. All right, so you guys must have started, test and bio tomorrow. You guys must have started, I would assume, then before Labor Day. We have one of the later start dates in, I think, the US. Good luck on your test. I'm sure you will rock it. So this FRQ review will hopefully be helpful for that. So other upcoming reviews, basically every Monday night, we're going to have a live stream about some sort of content. And so the schedule for that looks like statistics next week. And then, so that's like a consistent thing. Every Monday at about 8 o'clock Eastern, we'll have someone on doing a content review. So those are kind of consistent and useful. And then throughout the week, we'll have other things peppered in kind of depending what we have going on. So next week, we have a Unit 1 FRQ practice. So we'll take those skills that you guys are going to learn about tonight and put them to practice with one of our student streamers. And then over the weekend, next weekend, we'll have a teacher streamer talking just about various Unit 2 activities. So that's some of that bio stuff. So yeah, hopefully Monday nights work for you guys because that would be the content streams, and then any other night that you can also tune in for some of these kind of extra skill-based streams or information-based streams would be good as well. As we go tonight, just want to make sure you guys know there's that Ask a Question tab at the bottom of your screen. You can actually type questions in there, and then it sends me a little notification, and I will see it and answer it when I get to it. Otherwise, you guys can ask questions to each other, talk in the chat. Feel free to communicate with one another. So I'm going to get started. Tonight, I'm going to just go over exactly what an FRQ is, kind of like what they are on the test, how you write one, and then I'm going to show you 2 practice examples. I'm not going to write out a full answer for each one. I'll answer part of it just to give you guys kind of the gist of it. But tonight's more about the basic skills and things in writing an FRQ and less about the actual content of an FRQ. So that's where we're headed. So introductions to FRQs. An FRQ is a free response question, FRQ, and it does count for 33.3% of your AP exam grade. So remember, when you sit down in May to take the AP exam, you're going to answer 100 multiple choice questions, and that's worth 66.6% of your overall AP score. And then you'll sit down with 2 short answer questions, which is like the free response, and that's worth 33% of your grade. So each question that you get in the FRQ is going to have 7 bullet points under it. And then those are multiplied to equal a total of 50 points. So basically, if you do the math on that, there's 7 bullet points in one question, 7 bullet points on the other question. That's 14 total parts to the FRQ. And it has to equal 50 points total. So if you take 50 divided by 14, each bullet point is worth 3.57 points. So while the FRQ is only worth 50 of your exam points, each point is weighted a little bit heavier because there's less of them, right? You have 100 multiple choice questions, but only 14 FRQ points. So each one's worth a little bit more in essence. So what I always tell my students is like the FRQ is what can like boost your grade up to that 5, right? Like the multiple choice, you can get like a 3, even a 4, really. Sometimes it depends on the multiple choice, like without even answering the FRQ. Like if you really rock the multiple choice, you could have a 3 or a 4 already. The FRQ is what like boosts kids into the 5 range. And so learning how to write it properly, how to take the right approach to it can be really valuable in like boosting your scores. So like I said, it's a free response question. Basically, they give you a short scenario typically, and then you have to apply psych terms to the scenario. So for example, new this year, we actually kind of know sort of what the FRQs are going to be about. So one FRQ is always about concept application. So apply this term to the scenario, apply this term to the scenario. So they'll give you some little short story and you just apply terms to it. The second FRQ is always about research design. So they might talk about an experiment, they might talk about some sort of research study. And so that one's going to be much more heavily focused towards like Unit 1. And so it's really important that you know your statistics and your research methods and all of that stuff, like methodology behind the experiments, because you'll probably have to talk about it in an FRQ. So make sure you're tuning into those upcoming streams to kind of help you out. And then an FRQ is a specific writing style. It's not an essay. And so we'll talk about what that looks like in a second. So it's not like a big, long 5-paragraph essay or anything like that. The other thing about FRQs that I want to like tell you about is they are tricky. The thing is, when we score an FRQ, so what happens after you guys take the AP test, all of your answer booklets and everything get shipped to wherever the grading takes place. And then a bunch of social studies or a bunch of psychology teachers from all over the US and the world, they all come in and they grade for like a week straight. That's all they do is grade your FRQs. And so when they score your FRQs, we then get like averages. And typically, if there's 7 bullet points on an FRQ, the average is around 50% correct. So when you head into an FRQ, it can sometimes be a little scary because it's like, oh, it's just these 7 terms and I have to know these 7 terms. But the average is around 50%. So that I feel like should give you hope that like even if you don't know a few of the terms or feel that confident about some of the terms, that like hey, that's okay. That's totally normal, and I'm still going to do a good job. So FRQs are tricky, and so that's when I say they can really like boost your score. If you can like get to that 50% or just above 50%, you can like outpace the national and global average and really do a good job on your AP exam. So here's some do's and don'ts for writing an FRQ. You should write in complete sentences. I feel like that's just obvious, but you should use proper grammar, write in complete sentences, just like your normal basic writing skills, I would say. You should also respond to the prompt in the order it was written. So like I said, they're going to give you 7 bullet pointed terms in a row. You should answer that question then in that order. Let's say for term number 1, you're like, oh crap, I don't know that term. I'm going to skip it for now and come back to it later. Leave some space in your booklet and then start with term 2 a little further down. That way you can always go back and answer about term number 1 in the proper spot. They're not going to like downgrade you if you don't go in order. But the thing is, what I just told you is that these teachers are humans. So humans can make mistakes. And they're grading FRQs for a week straight, like 8 hours a day. And so people could make a mistake. Does it happen a lot? No. But you want to do everything in your power when you're writing the FRQ to make it easy on the grader. Because the easier it is to grade, the more likely they are to not make a mistake, and you'll get the points that you deserve. So go in order. You should skip a line between each term. So basically just like it's like a space between paragraphs. You leave a line as a space. Don't go every other line for the whole prompt, because when you get the instructions, it will say don't skip lines. That means don't write every other line, like double spaced. Just leave a gap between the paragraphs. That's okay to skip one line between every paragraph. You should be writing in pen. The instructions tell you to write in pen. And so make sure you have like a blue or black ink pen with trusty ink in it. Bring a couple with you the day of the exam. And then you should be defining and applying each term. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when I show you the actual question that we're going to respond to tonight. Things that you should not do: do not write an intro or conclusion. Literally, it won't even it doesn't do you any good. Just don't do it. You just jump right in and start writing about the vocab. It feels weird, right? We get trained in like our English classes to write a beautiful introduction that sets up the paper and all of that. This is a completely different writing style. And so you need to get used to this writing style. It's just a different way of doing things. And so we want to save our time and our energy and put it into the proper things. And then don't waste time on terms you don't know. You have 50 minutes, and so it's a timed test. And if you're sitting there struggling with the very first term, you're missing out on other ones that you might know later. So like I said, if you don't know something, skip it. Come back to it later if you have time, but don't waste your time on things you don't know. You want to make sure you're answering the questions that you can. Jana has a question about the structure of the Myers textbook and the units. Yeah, so I use the Myers second edition, which looks like you do as well. And in Myers, it says there's 14 units. Over the summer, they changed how AP Psych is set up, and they made it into 9 units. Really, all of the content is the same. They just combined stuff. So like in Myers, Unit 1 is like the history stuff, and Unit 2 is like research methods and things like that. In the new design, that's just one whole unit. So they didn't get rid of anything, they just combined stuff. So you're still going to read the whole textbook, all 14 units that are in your textbook. It's just that according to the College Board setup, some of those units have been merged to become one. So the content is basically exactly the same. There's a few small differences, but they just made it less units, basically. Good question. Yeah, so those are the basic do's and don'ts of writing an FRQ. I'm going to show you an example. The first one is a concept application. I'm trying to use terms from Unit 1 just so that if we all haven't finished Unit 1 or we're not all in the same place, that we can maybe know what's going on a little bit here. So here's the prompt. And the prompt sometimes is like a full paragraph. Sometimes it's just a sentence or two. But Harper is beginning her first year at Buckingham University. As a freshman, her major is undecided. She doesn't know what she wants to do for a career. While she doesn't know what she wants to do for a career, she has joined several clubs, an intramural dodgeball team, and the school newspaper. She enjoys her time at Buckingham U. Harper often gets in trouble for loudly arguing with the newspaper editor, and most recently, she was kicked out of a volleyball game for vulgar language. Even though she is involved in many activities, Harper does not have many friends and doesn't date because she feels the men at her school are not up to her high standards. Explain Harper's behavior according to the following psychological perspectives. So now you're going to take each of these terms, there's your 7 bullet point terms, and apply them to what you just read. So a couple of things here. These are all terms that come from the first unit. On an FRQ, you're going to have terms from Unit 1, Unit 3, Unit 7, Unit 10, all mixed together. This is just, again, because most of us are probably still in Unit 1 or around Unit 1. So I'm choosing all terms that we're hopefully at least slightly familiar with. And so I read this. Now I have to think about how do I apply each of these terms to Harper's behavior. So what I'm going to do is switch to like the editing screen, and I'm going to start replying as if I'm writing this FRQ, and I'll show you some things that I would typically do. So I'll be kind of bouncing back and forth on screens here. Okay. So remember the prompt. Harper's at school. She's having trouble. Let's talk about why. So here we go. The first term, oopsies, I got my caps lock on, is about the humanistic approach. So I start by talking about what it is. The humanistic approach in psychology focuses on, and so as I'm writing here, the first thing I'm going to do is just define the term. You always, always, always define it. I'm not writing an introduction or doing anything fancy. I'm just thinking about how I'm going to define it. And so the humanistic approach in psychology focuses on human potential for growth and self-actualization. Hey, I spelled it right. The other thing that you should do that I want to encourage you to do is always underline the vocab word when you write. So when you write this out and you're starting your paragraph, I want you to underline the humanistic approach. This, again, is just a little skill thing to do because humans make mistakes. And so if someone's reading your FRQ and you underline what you're answering, it draws their attention to it and it makes it stand out more. And so that way they're more likely to see what you're talking about and they're able to just focus on it. A lot of these things are more just like, I don't want to say skills because like underlining a word's not really a skill, but like little behaviors that are just kind of tricks to help you ensure that you get the best score possible. All right. So I defined the word. The humanistic approach in psychology focuses on human potential for growth and self-actualization. So now I have to look back at my prompt about Harper. Hopefully you can sort of read that on your screens. Now, how can I relate this to Harper's experience in college? And so I might relate Harper, sorry, I'm changing the name of the person here. Harper's behavior to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I might say something like, Harper's behavior could relate to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Her angry outbursts may be due to a lack of social, my typing skills, social connection and lack of feeling love and belonging. With those needs not being met, we see this anti-social behavior. So what I did was, in this example, I took some things that were going on with Harper, and I had to relate them then to the humanistic approach. So if I know the humanistic approach, I know that it's related to Maslow and the hierarchy of needs. So I think about how I could explain that. So when you're writing an FRQ, you can bring in extra information like I did. I'm assuming that because I'm talking from a humanistic perspective, that I can relate her behavior to this hierarchy of needs. I'm saying, okay, clearly she doesn't have a boyfriend. She's having trouble making friends. Maybe then she's lacking that love and acceptance that is so critical. And thus, it's causing her to act in an antisocial way. So I've showed that I understand the term first by defining it and then making it fit in this situation. In the chat, we're asking, do the graders take points off for incorrect grammar? No. Spelling and grammar do not count. However, they have to be able to tell what you're saying. So like if you're so far like off with your spelling or with your grammar, they might not score it. You do have to write in complete sentences though. So make sure you're doing that. So that's it. That's your first bullet point. So that's 3-4 sentences. It really depends on the prompt how much you need to write, but it's not definitely not like a full paragraph or like a full-blown essay or anything like that. So then I'm going to move on to my second term in the paragraph. So what did I say? I said leave a space. So I'm going to arrow down, leave a gap between the paragraphs. And I'm going to talk about the, what's my next perspective? The psychodynamic perspective. The psychodynamic perspective in psychology. Oh my gosh, you guys, my typing stinks tonight. All right, so I'm going to underline right away again. And so my very first sentence should be what? Tell me in the chat, what am I doing with this first sentence? What should my very first sentence be? Yes, so I'm just going to straight up define the term. Perfect. And then I saw a question, how many pages do you get? You get like a full, like a packet. It's a lot. You'll have, I think, plenty of room to write. It's like a little booklet with lined paper. So the psychodynamic perspective in psychology states that unconscious, how do I want to say that? Unconscious thoughts and memories often influence current behaviors. So there we go. I defined it. That's all I have to do for the first part. Then I now have to look at the scenario again. So let's look back at Harper's scenario. Oops, here we go. And figure out how I can relate some sort of unconscious motives to her current behaviors. So let me think. Okay, so I looked at it. I'm going to talk about her father abandoning her. That's not in the prompt, right? Nowhere in the prompt does it say that her father abandoned her, but I can add extra information to it to make it fit my situation as long as I'm not contradicting what's already in the prompt. So I might say something like, perhaps, I'm on the wrong screen, that's why. Here we go. Perhaps when Harper was a young child, her father walked out on the family. And then, so I'm setting up the scenario. While she doesn't consciously remember this experience, comma, or how it influences her today, it still exists in her unconscious memory, which causes her to have trust issues with men today. So you see how I kind of filled in the gaps there? I took some liberty with adding in some more information, and then I talked about how that could be the psychodynamic perspective, right? It's all these unconscious kind of buried thoughts. They're buried, so they're not like active thoughts, but they're there, and they're influencing her behavior today. So that's how you approach that question. I'm not going to do all 7 bullet points. I think you get the gist of it, but make sure you're starting with the definition, and then you're using the scenario and adding in information if you need to create an application that relates to each term. So that is what a concept application question will look like. We're going to move on then and talk about the second type of question. I'll go back into present mode here for you. Maybe if my computer wants to load. The second type of FRQ is a research design FRQ. So this one, the prompt is a little bit different. You can see that there's part A, part B, part C, and part D. That's totally normal. The FRQ could just be all terms, or there's maybe some different parts that you have to respond to or consider. So this one says, researcher Ravello is investigating the use of a new medication to treat obsessive compulsive disorder. She is conducting an experiment to determine whether this new medication is effective in treating the symptoms of OCD. And so you'll see we have part A asks me to explain the concept of obsession in regards to OCD. Part B gets into the actual experiment then. It wants me to identify an independent variable and then explain how confounding variables may impact the experiment. Part C talks about later on, I'm presenting this research to a panel at a local university, and then these terms might relate to the discussion of the research. And then part D, this is the thing I really want you to see, says draw and correctly label a bar graph that depicts Ravello's research findings. Every 10 milligrams of medication leads to a decrease in obsessive thoughts per day. So here, you're actually having to draw and correctly label a bar graph. That's part of this. So the research and design may have a component where you have to take data and discuss it, or actually show your data on some sort of probably a bar graph or a histogram. They may ask you to show a correlation, something like that. So this one's a little bit more like some skill-based type things. So you really want to make sure you understand all of the different ways we represent data in psychology, because you might be asked to do that. Yes, and research and design is now always part of the AP exam. So one of your questions will be something about an experiment or research or designing or statistics, something about it. Another one another type of question they might ask is they might ask you to actually design this experiment. Maybe they'll tell you that I want to study the effects of medication on OCD, and then you actually have to design out the experiment and talk about, this is what my variables would be, this is how I would set it up. That could be how this question is also played out on the AP exam. There's a few different ways, and we'll practice some different ways of doing it throughout the year. Like I said, we're just starting with this one for tonight. So explain the concept of obsession in regards to obsessive compulsive disorder. So I got to get back in my slides. I would just first have to define obsession. So sometimes what's tricky about this one is that font big enough? That seems really small. Ooh, I'll make it a little bit bigger. On the last prompt, it just gave you straight up bullet points, right? It said humanistic approach, psychodynamic approach. Here, it's telling you a little bit more information. It's saying, you know, talk about obsession in regards to obsessive compulsive disorder. So you sometimes have to like pick a term to define. So I'm going to say an obsession is an unwanted thought that can interfere. Ooh, am I typing? Interfere. That's wrong too. And sorry. Interfere with daily life. So I'm just kind of doing a really basic definition of obsession right here. Then I would have to talk about, let's go back to what the experiment says. Explain the concept of obsession in regards to obsessive compulsive disorder. So for here, then I might just want to give an example of it to show that I understand what an obsession is. Make this a little bit bigger still because it seemed like it was small. For example, someone with OCD may be preoccupied with thoughts of germs. These obsessions make it difficult for them to go about their daily lives. So I've just taken the term obsession that they want me to talk about and related it to obsessive compulsive disorder. Okay. Part B says to identify the independent variable in this experiment. So even though it just literally says identify the independent variable, I still would say an independent variable is, and actually define it. Underline. Define. I'm just trying to help you out here. And then now identify what it is. In this experiment, the independent variable is the medication received. So that could be a super short one. So for some of these, you do not have to be writing like 4 or 5 sentences. This one, easily 2 sentences, bing, bang, you're done. And so that is how you would respond to that. So that's kind of the gist of FRQ writing. Again, I mostly just want you for today to familiarize yourselves with what it is and like the basic skills. So we're skipping a line between paragraphs. We're underlining the vocab word. We always start with the definition and then the application, that sort of thing. And so your teacher might have different like rules. And it doesn't mean like they're wrong or I'm wrong or whatever. Some of it is preference, but from my years of doing this, a couple of the teachers that I work with actually do go to that reading and they grade all of your FRQs. They kind of told me like hints and tips and tricks. And so I feel like these are the best kind of practices that you should be doing to ensure your success, because they're kind of experts at it. They kind of know. We've been doing this a while, so I kind of trust where we're at with that. So that is really it to kind of recap the gist of FRQ writing. And then, like I said, next week you'll do a full practice one with one of our student interns. She's really great. She'll have lots of good info for you. And then you could get a chance to practice them as well, because really the best way to get good at this is to just keep hearing about it, keep practicing it, and then it'll just become second nature to you. So before I kind of peace out for the night, does anyone have any last questions about FRQ writing? Anything in particular? otherwise, like I said, we'll be here next week. There's lots of us. There's a couple teachers, a couple students. You have a lot of great resources at your disposal. So if nobody has any questions, and yes, research and design is always on the exam. There will always be one question sort of similar to the one that I just did, with some sort of component like that. Oh, do not use the term in the definition. Yeah, you should avoid using the term in the definition because then it doesn't always show clear understanding. So try to think of like synonyms, or like alternate ways of saying it, just to show that you kind of know what the word means. You might not get like penalized completely for it, but that's just good practice to get into when explaining the terms. So yeah. So I think this is a really good skill. This is something we'll keep working on. It's super important. Like I said, it's really what sets people apart, like with the 3s, the 4s, and the 5s. It's like your FRQ writing skills. So awesome. Well, I'm not sure when my next stream is. I think I've got a stream coming up in 3 weeks. I will see you guys then. Otherwise, make sure to tune in with our other streamers who are awesome, and they're going to give you some great information on AP Psych this year. So have a great week or two, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.